What the hell happened to you anyway? You look like 40 miles of rough road.
And welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast. I'm Ryan,
I'm Shane.
and the reason we look like 40 miles of rough road is because we live in America and daylight savings just happened. So we
Yeah.
lost one whole hour of sleep, and that fucks us up.
I've also been wordlessly wandering through a desert for 4 years, so that could be a factor.
That does it. That'll do
That'll make
it.
you look like 40 miles of rough road.
well, today we are, of course, talking about Palme d'Or winners, and our two movies today are Paris, Texas, and The Tree of Life. Um,
Yes.
Making this episode The Tree of Paris, Texas.
Yes. Paris Tejas, as I like to say. I like to pronounce things, the way they're supposed to be pronounced.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, two crazy movies, quite a combo. We kind of have had a Texas mini theme going on here. But yeah, so we are gonna talk full spoilers for both movies. But before we get into our main movie topics of the episode, we're gonna do some recent recommendations. We're gonna talk about what we've watched recently and without spoilers. So, stick around for that. Ryan, do you want to start us off?
sure. I'll start with just just yesterday I watched Death on the Nile, which is one of those Kenneth Branagh Branagh
Bernard.
like Bernard. Oh yeah, that's
Bernard.
right. He's
Bernard.
Bernard.
Kenneth Branagh, I guess
Branagh.
I'd say. I don't know.
Oh,
Doesn't
whatever you want
matter.
to say, you know. Um he directed I think three of these now, these like murder mystery remakes from uh I think the originals were from
Agatha
like the
Christie.
70s. Yeah.
They're all like Agatha Christie books. Yeah, I haven't seen any of these, but have you seen them all, or did you
Nope.
just
Just
hop just
watched Death on the Nile, which apparently is the third one. Not or
maybe,
the
yeah, second
second
one, I
maybe,
think,
but
second.
um and it didn't rely too much on the first, which is good, I think. I mean, I don't know, but there was definitely a few things where I was like, I think I'm missing something from maybe a little bit of built up from the characters from the first one.
I think
Um
it's just the main like Poirot, the detective. He's the only like
yeah,
recurring character in every sort of like the Knives Out series is influenced by these with same
yeah.
detective but a bunch of new characters every movie.
There might be yeah, I think Book is also one of the characters in it, is also in the other one. And there's a lot of like kind of connection between the two of them in this one that I think I might have been missing a little bit of, but definitely not enough to like need to watch them in order, I'm sure. Um I would say also I would probably recommend this movie if you're into murder mysteries. It's not a great movie. There's like a little, I think there's a little too much CGI. But it does its thing. It's a murder mystery. You solve the thing, there you go.
Nice. Yeah, I remember the trailers from this looking like it had a lot of just CGI backdrops and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I'm glad it was enjoyable enough.
I've never seen the original adaptations. But I think Death in the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express both have like adaptations from like the 70s, I think, but
Mm,
I haven't seen those either.
yeah. I've seen the original Murder on the Orient Express, but that's it. But
Nice.
yeah. Something I've watched recently, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, Jacques Demy musical. Every line of dialogue is sung in the movie. Every single one.
Holy cow.
I put it on. It has a great reputation. I've only seen one other Jacques Demy movie, so I'm like, I should finally watch this. It's only about 90 minutes, and they started singing every word, and I said, "Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy this." It took me a little. I had to adjust, so know that going in. But by the time this was done, I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought it was incredible. The set design and the use of colors and the cinematography, everything is like so precise and perfectly handled. There's like it's just a really great uh sort of a bittersweet romance, sort of a what's the word? Sort of like a Romeo and Juliet, like star-crossed lovers type of not unrequited love, but yeah, star-crossed lovers more of a situation. But it's a movie that inspired La La Land a lot. So if you like La La Land, definitely go check this out. But yeah, so finally ended up watching that. I guess I've been putting it off because musicals aren't necessarily my favorite, but I would say this is now like one of my favorite musicals, up there with Singing in the Rain and La La Land and all that stuff. So highly recommend it. However, there's a chance you'll cry. There's a
Oh,
chance you'll cry. But it's not a depressing cry. It's more of a I don't know how to describe it.
like a happy cry, like
Well,
the
not
love's happening
exactly.
thing. No.
Not somewhere in between there.
Okay.
But it's not going to make you depressed at the end of the movie.
Okay.
Maybe a cathartic cry,
All
perhaps.
right. All right. I feel that. Yeah. Well, we love a good cry
Great,
from movies.
great movie. It just looks great. The cinematography and everything, like it's just really fantastic. So I would definitely recommend it.
Very nice. Um, well, I'm gonna take
Well,
a curveball here, and I'm gonna throw in Paddington in Peru,
yeah,
which is the third in the Paddington Bear series now, of course. Um, and I mean, hey, if you like the Paddington movies, which I hope you do, it's another one of them. It's not as good as the others, but it's pretty fun. It's I mean, you know what you're getting yourself into. They're enjoyable, heavy British accents. You get a cute little bear, and this time they go to Peru, and for some reason, everyone in Peru also has British accents, but you just live with it.
nice,
It's worth watching. It's enjoyable. It's cute. There's another.
good.
Yeah, they always have those little heartfelt stories in them and meanings behind them. It's a little bit more about like moving on in a way,
Hmm,
and I enjoyed that. It's pretty cool.
nice. Yeah, I have not seen Paddington 3 yet, but I did like Paddington 1 and 2. I think maybe the controversial opinion here. I prefer Paddington 1 to Paddington 2. I know.
Whoa,
I know. It's crazy.
that is definitely
People
controversial.
people love Paddington 2, and Paddington 2 is good, but I really like Paddington 1. The guy who he floods the house. Hijinks. There's so much shenanigans.
The toothbrushes
Oh yeah,
up the
he's
nose.
what a goofy guy. I mean,
Yeah,
how could you not like it? They're both good, but yeah, I definitely would like to watch 3 at some point.
strong recommend.
Uh, good. I'm glad that because they have a new director for this one, so I'm glad to hear that it lives up to the first two.
Yeah, I mean it's not as good, but it's close. It's enjoyable.
Okay, okay, it's not a disgrace to the
Yeah,
Paddington franchise.
right, right.
um, well, here I'll throw a little curveball. I watched a short film on the Criterion Channel. It's called T, the letter T. It's from 2019. It's it it's sort of it appears to be a documentary, but it's not. But it's about a the T-ball in Miami, which is like where people it's sort of a celebration of life for people who have died, I guess, in the community, and they'll get like T-shirts, like rest in peace T-shirts, and dance and stuff like that. But it's a very the way it's made is very like poetic style. And the reason I watched it is because Ramel Ross, who directed Nickel Boys and Hale County This Morning, This Evening, he recommended it on like one of his letterboxed top four, like one of those interviews. And it's only like 14 minutes long, but it's really good, and you can definitely see how this influenced Ramel Ross potentially, and how I think this movie may have been influenced by like the Tree of Life, because the cinematography and a lot of the scenes, like it feels so real. I thought it like I didn't really know much about it going in, so I thought it was actually a documentary at first, and it was kind of towing the line, and I wasn't sure. And then it kind of just turns out that none of it's a documentary, but it's so executed in such a good way that it just feels real. Um, but yeah, really cool experimental short film. And there's also I guess I don't want to like necessarily spoil anything in the movie, but there are abstract sequences that are kind of similar to the Tree of Life, I'd say. So this is kind of a companion to the Tree of Life in some ways, I think.
Very cool. Well, I'll have to watch it now that that I've watched the Tree of Life, and then we're doing a Tree of Life episode.
I
What a
think it's
fun,
totally worth
yeah.
watching.
Also pretty fun. Right when you finish this episode, y'all, you can go ahead and jump onto the Criterion channel and watch T to follow up our Tree of Life conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd highly recommend.
Cool. Um, I'll quickly say that I rewatched Get Out.
Oh,
And
nice.
man, that movie just gets better every time you watch it. It's I think that movie is a masterpiece. Anyone that hasn't watched it, I strongly recommend watching it. It's Jordan Peele. It's his first one. Yep, it's his debut. And it's about a guy, a black male who's dating a white girl, and they go to her family's house, and shit gets weird. And it's a horror movie, and it has a lot of layers. And every time you watch it, I think you'll get deeper and deeper into that onion. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. And even if you have seen it, go rewatch it soon. Like, I don't know, soon. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah, great movie. And without spoiling anything, really great ending.
Oh
I
my
remember
god.
that ending in the theater like very just it's just great.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a great movie. Um I Great movie I watched. Michael Clayton.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Directed by I think Tony Gilroy. I think Dan Gilroy's yeah, Tony Gilroy. I mix them up. Dan Gilroy did Nightcrawler. Tony Gilroy did Michael Clayton. But anyway, uh
Are they
great movie.
brothers?
Yes, I think so.
Cool.
Yeah. Um but yeah, George Clooney plays like a sort of a middleman fixer for like a law firm. And they deal with shady clients and corporate scumbags, and they try to help them out. So he's sort of a morally compromised character. And there's a case involving corporate, um, I guess, like a corporate farming company potentially poisoning the water in like Wisconsin, and he has to deal with this. Tilda Swinton is in it. Also, I forget the other guy's name who's in this, but he's really good also, and he plays the lawyer who's in Milwaukee, and he's doing all the stuff. Tom Wilkinson. There you go. As I slowly pull it up, but yeah, they're all really great. Really well made movie, and also like it is kind of just like a bunch of guys in rooms like yelling at each other and stuff like that, which is kind of like a fun subgenre of movies that I enjoy. But and a lot of flip phones, a lot of flip phones, and a lot of took calling people on flip phones in intense situations, which is a very fun subgenre of movie. Um, but yeah, also like a little bit pulpier and like thriller like aspects thrown in there to make it to raise the entertainment value a little bit, but also it doesn't feel like out of place, any of that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed it. Glad I
Nice.
finally watched it. So yeah.
Nice. Well, my maybe my last thing I'll say is kind of a bigger one, but I'm now I'm going to be rewatching some stuff soon, but I'm watching through all of Kubrick's stuff. So Kubrick is one of my favorite directors. I love a lot of like 2001 and The Shining and uh, Full Metal Jacket, like tons of his later stuff. And so I decided I'd kind of dive into some of his earlier stuff. So I've watched through all of his stuff, his short films, his debut, his early stuff, all the way up to Spartacus. Uh, Spartacus was kind of long, so it took me a couple days to build into actually watching that one. But I'll say some highlights here. Uh, the Killing from 1956, Paths of Glory from 1957, and Spartacus from 1960. I would recommend to probably just anyone. They're all great movies. And anything before that is really just if you're like trying to watch Kubrick, I guess. There's really no need
Yeah.
to watch like Fear and Desire or Killer's Kiss, really. I mean,
Yeah, you could watch those last and it would be fair. I think,
yeah.
but it is kind of cool to go through a director's filmography chronologically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, really, like, it would almost make more sense to watch them last, though, because you'd kind of see what it builds into, and like you might have a more appreciation for some of what he does.
Yeah.
Um, and how that like influences his later stuff. Like if I didn't see any Kubrick, I probably would have felt even worse about Fear and Desire and Killer's Kiss than I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like The Killing, particularly is kind of one that I didn't really even know much about at all going into it, and really enjoyed. Paths of Glory I've heard about, and it's I think his first masterpiece in my opinion. I think some people might say The Killing is, but and then Spartacus was, it's like an epic, and he was kind of like a director for hire, and he didn't have full creative say in everything, but it's still, I mean, it's pretty awesome. Would recommend.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Fear and Desire I know was I think the last Kubrick movie that I watched. For a long time it was like impossible to watch because he basically didn't want anyone watching it. But then after he died, I think some copies were found and now it's on Blu-ray and everything, so it's more easily accessible. But but yeah, I think it's definitely easier to appreciate if you watch that one last once you've already seen where he's going, because then you can kind of see like, oh, I see where he's going with this, even though this isn't the perfect execution that he'll have in the future.
Yeah,
But
he's definitely not a director where like you're like watch his debut feature and you'll that's a great place to start with him, you know.
yeah, true. I think he didn't even like really consider it his first movie. Like he kind of
Yeah.
considered Killer's Kiss to be really his first movie, and he was like, yeah, that thing, burn it, destroy it. No one should see it.
Yeah,
But
he really distanced himself from it.
yeah. But
But
next up, you got Lolita, which
yeah.
is not my favorite Kubrick, although some people do really like it. Um, but then you got a really great run. So you just got to get through Lolita.
Yep.
And it's not an awful movie. It's just within the context of Kubrick's filmography, it's clearly, I think, in my opinion, it's below a lot of his other movies. But also I
Yeah,
should probably
so
rewatch it. I haven't seen Lolita in a long time. But
well, that'll be next time that we do uh these recent recommendations, I'll update y'all on the later half of Kubrick, although much of that will be rewatches for me. So that'll be a lot of fun.
yeah,
And just
nice.
fun to kind of watch them all in order and see how everything uh builds up, and how his work develops, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, last thing I want to say, I watched a couple Michael Mann movies, Last of the Mohicans and The Insider. Very good movies, very solid, and enjoyed very much. I also watched a movie I didn't enjoy called Assassin's Creed. This movie is not good. I would not recommend it. It's not worth the time. The Assassin's Creed. All right, I'm gonna have to go on a little diatribe here. Have you ever played an Assassin's Creed video game?
I have, yes.
What
They're
is
very fun.
what's the best part of the Assassin's Creed video game?
Well, I mean, like I think of maybe my intro to Assassin's Creed was 3, right? When you're in the Revolutionary War. The best part of it is blending into a crowd. You're in the
Yeah,
1700s, or the late 1600s, 1700s, and you're taking people out. You're jumping on rooftops.
yeah. Stealth.
Yeah.
And it's all in the past.
Oh yeah.
Do
No,
you remember that there is stuff in the future in the present day?
I do remember it, but I know they get a little more into that in the later ones too that I haven't played, but I pretty much ignore all that stuff.
Exactly. Well, the creators of this movie decided maybe 80% of the movie should take place in present day. Like almost the entire movie is set in the present day, and it just has these flashbacks to action scenes in the Spanish Inquisition. And the camera is shaky as hell. The action's not even good. But if you're making an Assassin's Creed movie, why the hell is 70-80% of it in the modern day? And it's all this convoluted like ridiculousness about there's some magical apple and there's like free will and all this crazy, just a terrible movie. And honestly, a talent bomb, because you look at the cast, so many good actors in it. Justin Kurzel, this is 1 year after he did Macbeth with Fassbender and Cotillard, and then now it's the same director and the same two leads a year later, and then they make this junk. So yeah, did not enjoy it. Would not recommend it. And I don't like to be harsh, you know what I mean, in the recent Rex section of the show, but this is also
Yeah.
like a giant studio project. It came out 10 years ago. I don't think anyone really cares. And I would just say don't watch it.
Hey, also, I mean, we are we're just giving you our advice here, right? We're keeping this part spoiler free so you can make the decision yourself for the most part. Whether we say that we recommend a movie or we say that we don't recommend the movie, you know, feel free to try it out. But that's just like our opinion, man.
Yeah, yep, there you go. That's the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, if you like Assassin's Creed, good for you. I'm glad you like it. But I just I I found it really tiring, and I was hoping it would be fun, and I didn't have fun, and so that was a big issue. So yeah. Anyway, ending it on a down note, but watched a lot of great movies past couple weeks, and including the two movies that we're covering today. The Tree of Life and Paris, Texas. As we said earlier, the title of the episode is The Tree of Paris, Texas. So we're going to start with The Tree of Life. Um, I can do, I can
Yeah, this
do
is
it. This
Shane's
is,
pick.
yeah, exactly. This is my pick for Palme d'Or winners. I would consider it one of my favorite movies. And probably my favorite Palme d'Or winner that I've seen, at least. I haven't seen every single one. But yeah, Terrence Malick, 2011 movie. It's I believe it's his follow up to the New World. So it's like his fifth movie. And then after this he makes like a bunch of stuff. He starts becoming more prolific. But yeah, pretty incredible cast and crew in this movie. But yeah, it's basically kind of hard to describe, but sort of the story of humanity as seen through this one family in 1950s Waco, Texas. Very from what I understand, it's very autobiographical to Terrence Malick's own life. He's very reclusive and not that much is known about him, but from what we know, it seems like it's a very and it does feel that way. It feels autobiographical. It feels a lot of the movie feels like a memory and these fragments of memories of childhood and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I love the movie. And Brian, I don't think you had seen it yet. So what did you think? What was your experience with it?
Yeah, my first time seeing it, and I was surprised. I think there was a lot of like surreal. Obviously, there's a lot of surreal imagery, a lot of like there's scenes of like space and the cosmos, and it really tells the story of life starting at like
The Big Bang,
starting at the Big
or
Bang.
before the Big Bang,
Yeah,
technically. Yeah,
yeah, and and the like celestial evolution of how stars got elements and all that stuff, right? And then eventually how the Earth formed, and then a little bit about life on Earth, right? So the development of eukaryotic cells that are the first living things, and then building into sea life, and then tetrapods that adventure onto the land, and then we get a dinosaur scene, which is pretty cool. And then the meteor kills the dinosaur, which is kind of sad. But and so like I did not expect any of that. It was I I was kind of like shocked going in to one see like the surreal imagery in general, but two like the whole story of life. And for anyone that doesn't know, I'm a science teacher, so it was actually really fun to watch the the space stuff and the evolution stuff and all that. The geology. It was really really cool.
nice.
And surprising and a blast for that part. I think the later part maybe not so much. Harder to describe it as like a blast, but I think
Yeah.
overall like a great movie for
Yeah,
sure. Um,
definitely agree with that. I think that the creation sequence is like one of the greatest sequences in cinematic history, in my opinion. It's like up there with the finale of 2001 and with the Dawn of Man sequence in 2001, which
I was
I
gonna
just
say, yeah,
yeah, definitely a lot of parallels with 2001, but I just absolutely love it. Like and there's that like Mozart song, what's it called? Is it for me Verissimo or something like that? I wrote it down somewhere. But oh,
I don't have the name of it, but
Lacrimosa,
yeah.
Lacrimosa. I was way off. I don't know what it was. I just threw some syllables together and I was like, maybe that's right. I don't know. Um, but yeah, just like the music, the epic music, and just seeing, I don't know, just the imagery is so incredible. I loved it. I actually was watching it and I rewound it and I watched it again and I got chills both times, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I was really like taken aback in a good way. Like when that started happening, and then when it kept going and the whole sequence, um I was baffled. mesmerized by all the cosmic stuff. I was wondering how they did some of it. You know, it reminds me. I know a lot of times in movies they'll do like gas tubes and watch and film them in uh, what like slow motion or something with different stuff in there. Um, so even at the very beginning of that, I was really mesmerized. And I love that we got when it got to the dinosaur, it gave us a little bit more time than any other one of those sequences where one of the dinosaurs finds like another dinosaur that's kind of like injured and just kind of hangs out for a second. It was kind of like a, you know,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
I think that well, okay. I should have said several things to say, but
yeah.
the special effects were Douglas Trumbull, who did the special effects for 2001 and for Blade Runner.
That
So
makes so much sense.
yes, and like he's just one of the greatest, and the effects are really incredible. I think a lot of it was like you said, like almost like seen through a microscope, and it's like just like water and smoke and I don't know, like I don't know exactly all the details, but a lot of it was they tried to do it practical as
Yeah.
much as they could.
It looked like it,
Mm.
and I really enjoyed that because it did remind me a lot of like 2001 and everything. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that moment with the dinosaurs, I think is, I don't know if it's intentionally, but I see the parallel with 2001 in the Dawn of Man sequence, where that, I don't, 2001 is the story of the evolution of man. The beginning is the dawn of man, and the moment is when we use, these pre-human ape creatures uh, use a tool and they use it for violence. And that really, I think, sums up like how Kubrick views humanity. That
oh
we
yeah.
learn how to use a tool and we violently murder someone, and that's like how. And then obviously whatever nuclear weapons later on. There's the cut, the famous cut. Um, but in this movie, there's the whole philosophy in this. There's voiceover in the beginning of about sort of grace versus nature, and how you have to choose grace, and it's sort of like being compassionate. And I think Malick is Christian, so there is a sort of that Christian um, you know understanding of things uh of grace being like a holy thing. And I think that moment is the first act of grace where
Mm,
uh and it's not necessarily humans, but it's just beings, like I guess God's beings or whatever. And he, the dinosaur is injured and laying down, and the other dinosaur sort of steps on his head for a second. And it's like, oh, I could kill this guy, but he chooses not to. And then he just walks away.
yeah.
And that's sort of maybe the first act of compassion for another creature, I think. And it's sort of, I just think comparing it with 2001 is just so interesting in the different ways that they look at humanity, and these like depicting this sort of uh creation myth in these different ways. But yeah, I fucking love the sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I think because it parallels so much with 2001, that's part of why I like it because I that's like maybe my favorite moment in cinema is the Dawn of Man sequence of 2001. And I think it's really cool to see this and I think you're totally right that it like very like kind of starkly contrasts the the first use of the tool, right? In such a telling way for like what this story ends up being. Uh, with that being said, once this story gets going, it's kind of a little hard to follow at times because of some of the surreal, uh, uh, kind of. I think really towards the end is when I started to get a little lost when a little
Jack,
lost in the story. Yeah, with like the older Jack version.
yeah, Sean Penn plays the
Yeah.
older Jack, and he's sort of in a city like a metropolis. I don't know if it's supposed to be Dallas or something like that. But and he's sort of lost, and he ends up in some sort of a desert and this large flat sort of area, and his family and his dead brother and his parents are all there at the end. And I think it's sort of, I kind of interpret it as like a depiction of like heaven, I guess.
Ah.
um so I think that's what it's supposed to be. But yeah, I mean that's the very end. We kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
have skipped
Um,
the middle, but yeah.
yeah. I think for me like the I really like, so that whole beginning sequence was very kind of surreal. It was very serene also. Like it was uh very like beautiful and poetic, right? And then there's the whole section in the middle when you have Jack like growing up as a kid, and his interactions with his family, right? His like coming of age moments, I guess. That feels like very raw and feels very, like you said, like autobiographical. Like it feels like stuff you like. It does feel like just kind of like loose memories, just like strung together, and in like this really interesting way that like I feel like I haven't seen too much in film before, where it doesn't feel like a cohesive like plot line that you're getting towards. It's really just, it almost feels like a montage in like in a film, but for the entire movie almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely shot in that way and edited in that way. But I think it really I think it works. I do think the
Yeah.
middle section, like in some way, kind of similar to 2001, the middle section is a little longer than it probably needs to be. Um, but I still think it works. And there is like Hmm. There's not a clear narrative like structure to that sequence, but I think you can see it in the way it is just coming of age, really, and the
Right.
way Jack's relationship with his parents and with his brothers affects him and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, a lot of times it'll just be moments uh that it seems like someone's remembering, sort of like when the neighbor kid drowns. Um, and I think that has probably an impact on the character, but also it's just like that's something you'd remember from your childhood. And maybe that whole sequence is sort of Jack reflecting on his life. Um, I don't know. I guess if I mean if he ends up in heaven at the end, maybe that is sort of him reflecting on his life before he dies and uh moving on to heaven at the end. But um but yeah, I think it's kind of interesting also that that sequence or the whole middle part of the movie, the family dynamics are very, I think that's the saddest and most like difficult to watch parts of the movie, is especially with Jack's father played by Brad Pitt and his anger and pretty much like abusive behavior toward his family, which I obviously now we would look at and be like, yeah, this guy is like abusive. But at the time, I think that was very much kind of considered a normal way to raise your kids. Like your kids are supposed to fear their father and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, that is, I think, the hardest part for me to watch. And part of the reason that I do love this movie, but I don't think it has that much rewatch value for me, or like rewatchability, because some of those sequences are just like, it is sort of like how I said Umbrellas of Cherbourg is not depressing sad. Some of the sequences in this movie I think are depressing sad, where it's like, oh gee, like Jesus Christ, oh my God. So I think, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that there's a lot of moments in those sequences when it does feel like just like loose memories, like we were saying, where yeah, like there's one moment where like they blow up a frog, right? They like strap a frog onto a model rocket. And it's like I feel like
Yeah,
that's something, like you do something like that as a kid, and it's something that you'll remember, right? Like
yeah,
and I feel like there's a lot of those where it's just things that it seems like you'd remember when it comes to it, right? When you're reflecting on your life, right? Um,
yeah.
and and some of them just feel like coming of age moments, right? Like strapping a frog on a model rocket, I guess, or like just hanging out and
Well,
shooting the BB gun, right? And lots of just like just being brothers moments, right?
mhm.
But then yeah, I mean the family dynamic is really, it's a rough dynamic for to watch, right? Like the there's one point when like when the dad Brad Pitt like lunges over the table when one of the kids talks when he told him not to, and everything goes to chaos, right? And yeah, I mean it's like chilling, and not in the same way as that sequence earlier was chilling, right? Like
No, yeah.
kind of you go from this like really fun and really kind of poetic sequence at the beginning where it's just like the whole story of life, and then the like reality of Jack's life growing up, which
Yeah.
isn't as poetic and serene, right?
Yeah, definitely. And but there are those moments too of like when his dad is off for like leaves for work and him and his brothers are with his mom and they're running around the house and they're having fun. Like there are those beautiful moments also in between, which I think is very that's just the way life is, you know what I mean? Like there are all those types of things that everyone experiences, you know what I mean? And you remember the good and the bad and everything. But yeah, I think from like a story standpoint, I don't know if maybe on this watch it was easier for me to see where the story in there, but I feel like it is showing the way, well, all right, it's showing the way that the father, the way he impacts his sons. And when he leaves, I think it is very telling, like that the sons start rebelling and they start acting out, and that's when they're shooting out windows or they're breaking windows like in around town, and they fuck with the frog and all that kind of stuff. And uh and part of it is, well, is it because there's not that discipline? Like, is that why they're acting out? Or is it that if the father didn't treat them that way, they wouldn't feel like they need to act out? You know what I mean? And if, you know what I mean, that, I don't know, that's just kind of an interesting
Yeah, right.
aspect of the
Kind of,
story.
yeah. It brings up the question of like of what is the best way to parent, right? Like, um, I, I don't know, right? Like,
Yeah. I don't think it's the
uh,
way Brad Pitt parents.
yeah. I mean, I think
Probably,
that's definitely true.
probably in real life and in the movie.
Yeah, definitely the movie. Yeah, I mean, I think there's uh like I think there's probably a balance of like sternness and grace, right? That might help more, right? But because it's almost like when yeah when they're left with just the graciousness of their mother, like you said, they kind of do whatever. But when they're left with the overpowering like uh sternness of their dad, then it's like they don't talk and they're like very like they're stunted, right? Like they can't do anything.
Yeah.
um and so I wonder if maybe it's trying to say something about like a balance there, but uh obviously I mean I think I'm not a parent, but I would hope that that balance leans more on the graciousness side. But
Yeah, definitely. And so I watched on the Blu-ray I have, there's a behind the scenes documentary
oh
about
wow.
Tree Life, and Brad Pitt mentions that he says that the mom represents grace and the dad represents nature. And that is sort of like the whole part of what the whole movie's about. And definitely, yeah, the side of grace, that's all the positive memories that they have. And there's pretty much no positive memories of the dad. It's all anger and sternness for like for no good reason. And I think, yeah, so at the we did talk about this as if the creation sequence is the first scene, but there's actually a sequence at the beginning before the creation sequence where we see Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain, and they are grieving the loss of one of their sons, and it's the middle kid. I think his name is RL, um, and they yeah they like get a thing in the mail that he died, and the Brad Pitt's character has a moment where he's like, "Oh, I criticized him for like I forget what it is. Like he didn't, I don't know, he didn't cut the grass right or something like that." And he's like, "Oh, why did I do that?" Like he's having those regrets of being too stern and not showing his son that love. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think definitely it is showing. Uh, I don't know. It's a very clear dichotomy. I don't think the ideal is in the middle of the two characters. I think Jessica Chastain is more the ideal, and Brad Pitt's is more what we should avoid.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that that really sad opening sequence that where it's them learning that their kid died. I think you're right. Like um we see him like reflecting on like what he did wrong, right? And like what he should have done instead. Um and we don't see the mother doing that, right? So it's like pretty telling that like one of them maybe did some stuff bad. The other
Yeah.
probably didn't because maybe they would also be reflecting on that too, right? Um,
Yeah. And like Brad Pitt's character, he talks about how he wanted to be musician,
mhm.
and whatever, he says he got distracted. I think he probably resents his family for sort of not allowing him to follow that dream that he had, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a part of it too. Um,
Yeah, when he was talking about that, I thought he was gonna say when he was saying that he got distracted when he was trying to become a musician. He's talking to like his, I think it's he's talking to Jack
yeah,
walking up a street, and I thought he was about to say like I got distracted with having you and raising kids and stuff, and like I thought like it was about like I almost was like fringing. I was like, this is gonna feel so uh so tough, right? So bad.
yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't say
He
that. But I
he
was sure he was gonna.
Yeah, it's implied, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he means. But yeah, also I think in some of the imagery and everything, it looks very like Norman Rockwell, like almost ideal 50s Americana,
Oh
but the
yeah.
movie is showing sort of this fucked up reality like beneath that, beneath the veneer of everything is nice. And we see this too also. There'll be shots of the in the neighborhood of like they're walking by and they're inside another house, there's another family, and they're having a screaming match in the house. So it is that sort of fucked up thing within a house that you don't see when you just see the surface of everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's even something there about like because the dad wanted to be the musician and then um and eventually I mean the dad is working at um doing something that ends up closing towards the end of that whole growing up sequence, right? The factory closes or whatever it is, the plant, he says. Um, and so he has to essentially they have to like up and move to a new place. And the whole movie kind of feels like it's showing the like failure of the idealistic American dream, right? Like the fact that it's not a reality, right?
Yeah.
And both in the personal lives of the kids, right? Like there's all this stuff going on inside, but also with the dad's career, right? Like he doesn't become a musician, he has this job, but it ends up failing, right? And now he has to just up and move, right? And uh and yeah, I think like even when they're driving away, there's that shot of the house and it's just getting further and further away, and it feels like that's like the moment of they have to leave behind that idealistic world and do something else, right?
Yeah.
And then we
But
don't see
also,
anything else, really.
right. Oh, and then we see Jack when he's grown up and he's living in the city and he seems lost and dissatisfied.
Yeah,
Um, and maybe it's not that he's literally in heaven at the end, but he maybe he's lost and then he finds like faith, and this is just him imagining what heaven is going to be like. And maybe that's part of it of sort of like not that he dies and goes to heaven, but that he has that sort of like a salvation of realize like having a, gaining faith or something like that at the end.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I will say, like, I'm not religious, but I do think movies that are about faith and you know, religious themes, I guess, religious philosophical themes that are not like preachy, like God's not dead or whatever, can be really rewarding and interesting to think about and all that kind of stuff when it's because this movie does not feel like it's preaching at you or like trying to convert you or you know what I mean, like or vilifying people who don't believe the same thing. Like it's never, an explicitly like faith-based type of movie, but it's just about existence and stuff like that. But yeah, but anyway, the point was that I think Jack is also dissatisfied in sort of modern American society. So I think that is definitely a theme in the movie there.
yeah, I agree. And I think I also think that I agree. I'm also not religious, but I do feel like the religious like overtones here really work and make it just a more emotional movie, right? And it does bring in like a lot of interesting philosophical like questions of like reflecting on your life and reflecting on uh other people in your life, right? And death and what may have been like childhood trauma and stuff, right? um
Yeah.
there's also I mean, the very beginning, the quote from the book of Job, and I don't remember the quote very well, but
I think I have it written down here. Oh yeah. It's Job I forget exactly what these numbers mean, but it's 38 4 verse 7, I think. I forget exactly what that all that is. But anyway, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? That I guess I assume that is God speaking to Job, maybe, or whatever. But yeah, that's the quote.
um yeah, and it might be Job speaking to God, because I believe that Job in the Bible like loses everything. He's like a very devout person, and has like a uh he like he has like a prosperous family or whatever, but then loses everything, uh and it's like a test of his faith, I think. But obviously that would suck to lose everything, right? uh I don't know,
Mm.
so that could be
May-
Job maybe, but
Maybe, I mean, whatever. I'm just
yeah, I don't
reading
know.
this one quote. I should probably just read the actual thing, but
eh,
maybe the
I guess.
first question is, well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
read, read the context of it. But the first question, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? That could be God.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
that's not Job.
there's an ellipses, and it says, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy with a question mark. So
Mm.
maybe that is Job responding, and he's saying like that's when things were good and I wasn't around for it, sort of a thing, maybe.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know about the quote necessarily. It does sound like maybe it is just it's you know maybe it is God talking to Job, and maybe it's him saying, like, shit sucks right now because you've lost everything, but don't you remember when everything was great, right? When all the sons of God were in joy, right? Um, but I think that there's some parallels here of like Job, from my pretty minimal understanding of biblical figures, and the dad here, where the dad like the father like loses his job and loses everything, and has to like move on and do something else, and loses the American dream, that he never really had but maybe envisioned, um, and maybe that is kind of like a test of his faith. I don't know, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
like a lot
definitely.
of religious stuff going on here for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it could be also that Jack is sort of Job in a way and going through sort of these trials and tribulations and how he, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And maybe that it does go toward at the end, maybe that is him finding his faith and after he's gone through all these trials and tribulations. I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. It could be. Yeah,
I did want to say, like, this on a more like movie technical level, this movie's shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, who's one of my favorite, probably my favorite cinematographer. He shot The Revenant, Y Tu Mamá También, Children of Men, like so many great movies. Uh, and the cinematography in this movie is very distinct and one of a kind. Um, and a lot of very wide angle lenses and a lot of, especially in the coming of age sequences, a lot of like low angles, and I think they're trying to present it from a kid's perspective of this is how they see the world. They're literally lower to the ground. um and yeah, and also to go with sort of the themes of the movie, and obviously the title of the movie, there's a lot of focus on trees, and the the camera like roams in certain ways, and there'll just be a random shot of the camera sort of going up to a tree, and then we have a different like shot of kids running around or whatever. But there are a lot of shots of trees and from a low angle sort of looking up at them as they're like going toward the sky. And I think it's also contrasted at the end with a lot of shots of the buildings in the city also reaching up toward the sky. um and I think that imagery also plays in with these themes of faith and God and all these kind of themes that the movie is exploring.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And the cinematography is just like gorgeous, right? And it's on the, I think it's all handheld, it seems, at least. Um, And I mean,
Gotcha.
there's even like the beginning before the whole like creation sequence. There's one shot during the funeral stuff where it's just like a spiraling um stained glass window going up
Mhm.
in I assume inside the church, and it goes up, and like it's just gorgeous, right? And then a lot of it is is kind of on that handheld, so it's a little like there's a little bit of movement to it, and it's really low to the ground, and you're seeing like it's going up to like the truck, for example, right when the dad's working under it and stuff. And um it's maybe not like iconically like scenic like that stained glass thing, but the cinematography is really nice, right? It's really it works for what it's trying to do, and it's really gorgeous, except for when it's trying not to be, right? When it's trying to show something more gritty. Not really gritty, I guess, but you know, like that sequence. I mean, the kid's about to like the kid's thinking about knocking down the thing holding the truck up to kill his dad, right? So like
Oh
it
yeah, yeah.
the you know you're seeing like this broken down truck, and it's not necessarily the most appetizing sight, but it's shot really well.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and the editing too, I think, is really like uh again builds into that whole feeling like it's like a kid's memories, right? It just very snippy editing, I think.
yeah, definitely. Yes, I agree. Oh, I wanted to say also that they talk about this in the documentary, behind the scenes documentary, uh, that a lot of the scenes in the house they were very improvisational, and Terrence Malick, especially from this movie on, I think he does a lot of scenes with natural lighting. And so they could basically shoot the entire house and they don't have to worry like we can't get these lights in the camera. So they had a bare bones crew and they basically let the actors just roam around the house. And if they went into a different room, they just follow them into a different room and they could have be doing whatever they were doing, and whatever worked for each scene. But obviously it's not like everything was improvised. Like there were scenes where it's like, oh, you're gonna freak out or you guys are having fun running around. But um they I think that also uh gives the movie a sense of like it feeling totally natural and just like where it feels like a real memory. Like it doesn't feel none of it feels artificial. It all
Yeah,
feels very natural, and I think that's a benefit of the way the movie is filmed and lit and edited and everything. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I think I read a quote from like Brad Pitt about the making of the movie where he says something like, you know, you go to most movie sets and there's huge lights and massive things already set up, right? And huge cameras and sets of cameras and tons of people. And making the Tree of Life, you know, you go in there and there's like one guy with a camera and someone behind him, right? And you're just walking around, right? And it's interesting, like it really helps make it all feel pretty natural. Um, yeah, I mean that's crazy.
Yeah.
It almost feels like kind of like how they would make like a low budget uh movie, right? Like I mean they're just using minimal stuff. They're using natural lighting, right? It's like Steven Soderbergh like making the presence almost, right? Natural lighting in a house, pretty low budget, but
Yeah,
um
I think even though this movie is not explicitly point of view, like in
yeah,
pretty much any of the shots, like this movie certainly is like inspired, I think, movies like Presence or Nickel Boys
yeah,
or or also Ramel Ross's like documentary debut, Hale County This Morning, This Evening. I think that is another movie that's he's talked about being inspired by The Tree of Life and Tarkovsky's Mirror. Uh, which is also another movie that's deals with memory and sort of the abstractness of memory and stuff like that. But yeah, the movie, just because of the way it's shot, it feels like it's from uh, a lot of them. The shots are point of view shots, and like I said, sort of from like a kid's point of view, with a lot of low shots and everything. So yeah, I think it's definitely inspired movies like that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this movie just feels very um it does feel very experimental, right? So I can see that it can help to influence those other experimental things that come up. Um and I do think this movie like we're comparing it to something that might have inspired like Presence. It is obviously much better than Presence. I think we would both think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see. Like, it's only from 2011, right? And it's influenced like a lot. It feels like. And I mean, you can also see the influences before it, like 2001 and everything, like bleeding into it, which is always fun to see in a movie.
Yeah, definitely. And this, so just out of curiosity, is this your first Terrence Malick movie that you've
It
seen?
is, yeah.
Interesting, because this is like kind of, I don't know if it's a good place to start. I'm really not sure. Because in a way, like his filmography, like it has, I mean, this is only his fifth movie. His first movie is Badlands, comes out in 1973. And he does Days of Heaven 5 years later. And then he has a 20-year gap of no, doesn't make anything. And then there's Thin Red Line, Brave New World, and then or no, The New World. It's not Brave New World, The New World, and then this. But as every movie goes on, I feel like they get more and more poetic. And this movie, I think, is sort of a like high point of his the evolution of his style through his movies. And then the movies after this, I haven't seen all of his movies after this, but uh, they definitely feel like sort of a continuation of this style in different ways. But yeah, I think it's definitely all those first five movies are really all great, and it's definitely interesting to see the way his style evolves over time. But
Interesting.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that's really cool. It'd be cool to watch more of his. I know he is like very reclusive. Like, I think he wasn't there at Cannes to accept the Palme d'Or award. I think that some of the producers had to like go and accept it for him, take it on his
yeah.
behalf.
Yeah, he there's like only like a few photos of him, I think. There was one thing where TMZ was like filming like Benicio del Toro, I think, and Terrence Malick was just in the background and they like made it a whole thing. They were like, "Oh, we didn't even realize, but Terrence Malick is in the background of our like paparazzi shots." And they're
It's like one of the five photos of him.
yeah, yeah, for real. But he's a very unique character. I think especially like with social media and everything and the way I mean, I'm just modern directors like, let's say, Bong Joon-ho or Oz Perkins or Jordan Peele or whoever, like getting part of social media and stuff. I feel like a lot of directors now are like advertising themselves in a way and their own personality and getting people to buy in for that reason. And he's really like completely the opposite from a different time. But he's still working. He's working on a movie about Jesus right now, I believe. I believe they shot it and it's been in post production for maybe like a year or two because that's how Terrence Malick makes his movies, I guess. He's just shoots a lot of stuff, and then it's probably going to be just really poetic. And I'm really excited for that, if slash when it comes out. But yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Um, well, do you have anything else to say about The Tree of Life?
I don't know. I mean, I think we talked a lot about it. I think we talked about most of it. I think I'm satisfied. I love the movie. I don't know if you have the rating aggregator there.
I do. Yes. Uh, so this has 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, only 60% audience score, 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd, uh, bringing it to an average of 7.225 out of 10. Which is interesting. That huge jump from critic to audience, I think, probably makes sense. This is a very it can feel very experimental in even the way it's put together, but also the way that the story kind of works and everything. It's
Yeah,
very poetic.
yeah, very yeah, 100%. It doesn't surprise me that a lot of people didn't like this. I definitely have feel like I've heard a lot of people be like, "Oh man, once I saw the dinosaurs, I was out." I was like, I love that part. I
What?
think that yeah, I know. But like I don't know, people probably didn't know what to expect and then to get this is a very unique and unconventional movie. So I definitely understand why it would turn off a lot of general audiences.
Yeah, but I mean, then if you don't like the dinosaurs, what do you even like?
I
Like,
know. I mean, come on.
what are you watching cinema for?
Yep.
um,
I
well, Shane, I doubt it's any surprise. What did you give the movie?
5 stars
Excellent.
out of 5.
5 out of 5. Excellent. Uh,
What would you give it?
I give it 4.5 out of 5. I think I love it. I think it's awesome. Maybe I could have. I was like really close to 5, but I
No,
think
no, no.
it lost me a little bit at the end with the beach sequence and I could kind of see what they were doing, and I like what you're talking about with like maybe it being heaven or like a visualization of heaven. I was thinking a lot about like the waves being like representing like the flow of life, right? And so that's why he's seeing like younger people and older, like whatever. But yeah, I don't know. There was some stuff there that I was like, I don't know if I fully felt satisfied with the ending, but overall I really enjoyed the experience. It was a great movie.
That makes sense. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's awesome. So hell yeah. I guess that's that for the Tree of Life. And next up, we got Paris, Texas. Ryan, this was your pick. I don't know if you want to start us off.
Yeah, sure. So this movie, 1984, directed by Vin Wenders, written by Sam Shepard and L.M. Kit Carson,
Mm,
uh, and shot by Robbie Mueller. Uh, and let's see, it stars Harry Dean Stanton as Travis, who's kind of wandering the desert uh, in Western Texas, has been there for maybe like 4 years. And his brother Walt, who's played by Dean Stockwell, comes to go find him. And that's where we really pick up. Oh, and I guess one other like
yeah.
important thing just to throw in at the very beginning is Ry Cooder is the composer and uh, it does the music for the movie, which is really impactful here, I think. So probably
Right.
just good to mention.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, basically we learn that Travis has well, we don't learn why he's disappeared until the very end, but we learn that he's disappeared and abandoned his wife and son, and the son is being raised by Walt and his wife well, Anne, and and yeah, I mean, this was my first time seeing the movie, and I was very impressed by the cinematography, and I really like the score also. It I don't know, it was very different approach to depicting America at, as compared to the Tree of Life. Sort of also maybe like is Waco in like East Texas or North Texas maybe?
I
Because
don't
I
know.
okay, because I think this one is more like South Texas or Western Texas because it's more of a desert,
Yeah.
and Waco in the Tree of Life is more just like kind of a more average American suburban town. But this depiction of Texas is just like a complete desert. Like it almost looks like Arizona or New Mexico or Nevada, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Waco is like, it's definitely on the Eastern Texas area. It's like between Dallas and Austin, it looks like. So,
Oh, okay.
um, but yeah, this takes place, and I think Paris, Texas, is over on that side also.
Oh,
Paris, Texas, I think is near Houston or on that area on
oh
that
yeah.
eastern coast. But
It's east of Dallas. So yeah.
okay, so yeah, but this doesn't really take place in Paris, Texas at all.
No.
In fact, I don't. I think we see a picture of Paris, Texas, but I don't think we ever go to Paris, Texas. This movie
Hmm.
mostly takes place in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Which I did not expect.
Me neither. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is both of our first times watching this one, and I would say I definitely expected more of more Paris, more Texas, not Paris, France. I knew it was not actually about France, obviously, although some good
Hmm.
jokes about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised that we never got to Paris, Texas, and I was surprised that it took place so much outside of Texas. But I mean, it works, right? So Walt comes to Texas to find Travis and finds him. Travis is kind of
And
maybe has amnesia, maybe.
it's really unclear. Like, so I guess just starting with the my experience of the movie, like at the beginning, I have a lot of questions of to how Travis got here, why he's acting like this. At the beginning of the movie, he's basically he's not mute, but he won't talk. He, he doesn't talk to anyone. He's just wandering around and he's looking for water. And he ends up like finding some ice in a bar, and then he passes out in the bar. And that's how a doctor finds him, and they contact Walt and all that. But it's very, I don't know. It doesn't. It's an over the top. Like, what has caused this character to act in such an extreme way of going and completely just being now wandering around the desert, not speaking to anyone? Like, something must have happened. So I think it's a very good hook for the movie, and it definitely, piqued my interest, and I wanted to know more. And yeah, also, I mean, just to reiterate, the cinematography in this opening sequence is really, really great, and a lot of incredible shots. Like Robbie Mueller is really, really, he was amazing, and it really emphasizes the vastness of the landscape and like the American West, which I think makes sense coming from like a German director. Uh, this is sort of the thing that is in America that is not really in Europe. So it kind of makes sense to want, maybe that's what part of the reason he was interested by it. But yeah, a lot of just really great shots of the sort of American landscape. Um,
Oh yeah, and those wide shots of just Texan desert and like one building surrounded by nothing, right?
yeah,
Um, Gorgeous. Especially when it's accompanied by that like kind of bleak like single string guitar kind of music. It felt very Texas, right? I mean
mm.
this feels like a very kind of Texas American movie, right?
Yeah. It is interesting that this movie does feel very American and very Americana, but it's by a German director.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and it's in the 1980s. This is like kind of the peak of Reagan presidency, and at this time, like there's not a lot of like pro-Americanism in Europe, right? So it's kind of interesting to depict uh such a very American movie by a European by Europeans, right?
Yeah.
Feels like an
I would,
interesting time to do that.
yeah. I saw your letterbox review and I was curious because when I was watching it, I didn't necessarily think of any political, like, ex I don't know, nothing political really came to mind as an interpretation of the movie. It felt very like personal and uh I don't know, just sort of a
Mm.
personal drama. And there are shots of the American flag. There's a lot of like red and blue are colors that are used often, but I didn't necessarily have an interpretation of that. So I was just curious what you thought about that.
Yeah. I felt like this movie. Well, I'll just say I feel like this movie has a lot of depth to it. When I watched through it, I felt like there was a lot of ways that you could interpret a lot of stuff. And one of the things I was thinking about and kind of interpreting here was that Walter and his wife, they have like a Volkswagen. They have, or at least Anne has like a German accent, and
French.
French
French.
accent. That's what
Yeah.
a
Yeah, she's
French accent.
French. She's played by a French accent actress, but also the character they mentioned that she's French.
Yeah, and they live in LA, right? Like this hub for like uh for like international connection and all this stuff, right? But then Travis, he has like this truck. He has this like it's like this rusty old truck, right? He has cowboy boots and a hat. He lives in like the desert of, or he's wandering like the deserts of Texas. He feels very like American, right? And very like uh kind of maybe like idealistic cowboy American, even though he's maybe not the most like necessarily like masculine. Like he's not like the 80s representation of like masculinity, but
He's
he
he's
does feel very American.
he's very much an individual, which is a kind of an American idea. Maybe that is
Yeah, like
what.
alone. Yeah. Um, and so to me, it kind of felt like he was maybe representing, or he could be viewed as representing America, kind of wandering in on its own in the desert. And maybe that's like, hey, Reagan kind of wasn't doing a lot of great foreign policy, right? He wasn't making people very happy with him in Europe, right? And so Europe, or Walt and Anne, needs to like come and help him find his way, like back to being not lost, right? Not as wanderous, but
Mm, I see. Okay. I didn't have any. I didn't think about that very much in the movie, to be honest. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
that's cool.
yeah, you probably, I mean, I feel like it's probably not a very strong interpretation. I'm not going to say it's like it has like the foundation behind it necessarily, but I definitely was picking up on some stuff where I was like, it's interesting that they have such a like a dichotomous view between Walter and Anne and Travis, right, when he's alone.
Mm,
And so I felt like maybe there was something there to that. And I think part of the reason I'm thinking of that is because of kind of the current American politics landscape of kind of separating ourselves from some of our European allies. I think
yeah.
in many ways,
Yeah.
like Trump kind of is similar to Reagan in some of that foreign policy work. But
Yeah. Yeah. I get you. I get you. Yeah. I kind of was just thinking of it as more just about these characters. I guess I wasn't necessarily thinking about broader political machinations of the '80s and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a cool interpretation. But yeah, I mean this the story, like, I don't know. The the things I struggle with in this movie were like the story and Travis's character, where some movies, like, I'm like Taxi Driver, for example, or A Clockwork Orange, the main character is fucked up and does bad things, and that's the point of the movie, and like the movie seems to know that this is not a good person. But in this movie, I was kind of like, I felt like the movie uh didn't fully grapple with how awful of a person Travis kind of is. Like, if you step out of the movie and the experience of it and all that, it's like, okay, this guy is like probably in his 40s or something, maybe 50, and he meets like a 17 or 18-year-old girl, and then he gets her pregnant, and then he is an alcoholic and kind of abusive, and he ties her to the stove, and then he abandons them for 4 years. And then he comes back and he's like, I try to connect with his son and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, the character was uh kind of vile and awful, and I kind of struggled to empathize with him. And I think that kind of held me back from like getting that emotional engagement with the movie. And then at the end of the movie, when there's that big cathartic scene, I was more like the kid would Hunter would have just been better off if Travis never came back. Like,
yeah, Walt just kept racing.
he goes from a loving family to being taken to his uh taken by his scumbag father to his mom, who's basically a prostitute now. Like, and then Travis just leaves again at the end. He just drives off to nowhere. I'm like, I don't know if this was the movie was going for this, but I was like, this guy's a complete scumbag. Like,
Yeah.
and it just, I don't know. I didn't feel like the movie was, uh, like aware of that in a way. Do you see what I mean? Almost the
Oh
way,
yeah.
like, I feel like I'll watch like maybe like a James Bond movie, and I'm like, James Bond's kind of a fucking asshole, but in the movie, he's supposed to be like the coolest guy ever,
Yeah.
right? And that's obviously maybe more extreme, but I felt that way about this a little bit, and I think that hindered me from fully getting into it.
Yeah, I can see that. I think for me, I don't think I really put together the fact that he was such a bad person until that monologue with the mirror scene at like this iconic mirror scene at the end, right? Um, and and I think that made that scene really hit. Like I was kind of like I had kind of like chills of like, wait a second, I've been following around this asshole this whole time. Like
Mm,
this guy tied his wife to a stove. Like uh suddenly I feel very different about this whole movie, right? But
mm,
feeling that like at the end, I felt like that might have been the intention, right? Like it felt like it didn't really give us a lot about him until then, right? Like
mm,
he was supposedly amnesiac, uh, supposedly had amnesia, right? And so like we didn't know a lot about him, right? Even he didn't talk until Walt got there, and even then, not until driving back, right? So I feel like I didn't know a lot about him, and like was just kind of intrigued to learn. and then when I actually learned about him, I was like, oh shit. Uh, I wish I didn't know anything about this guy.
So I was wondering throughout the beginning of the movie, like I didn't know if he really had amnesia or what was going on. I thought he was potentially like intellectually disabled. Like
Mm,
like he was like he was in a car crash and he
yeah,
has literal brain damage. Like so
yeah,
the way he acts is so strange. And it reminded me actually of this Werner Herzog movie, The Enigma of Caspar Hauser, which is about a guy who grew up like locked in like in a basement basically. And then he comes out as an adult and he is not accustomed to society at all and he's like he acts very strangely but also he acts very purely and sort of to show sort of the absurdity of society and stuff like that. It's a really great movie, but that character acts in such a strange way, but it's motivated by something where I'm like, well, I guess it makes sense. Like if you're locked away in a basement for 20 years, you'd be weird. You know what I mean? But I felt like this movie didn't fully give me enough of like a reason as to why he was acting that way, which left me a little bit frustrated. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I can see that. I think that to me, I thought that he really didn't know what happened before, right? It felt like he was very separated from it. Um, and there's one part when I think it's at the beginning of the mirror scene. She says, um, "Is it Jade? Jane? Sorry,
yeah,
Jane says, "Are you the one that visited me the other day?" And he says, "No." And to me, I felt like that was actually like he's not the same person as he was this whole movie because he remembers and he understands what's happened before now. And so I feel like when he went back to her that second time, when he leaves his kid in the motel and he goes
mhm,
back. I think somewhere there is when, I guess maybe even when he was talking to her the first time and breaks down, right, is when he realizes who he was and what he did. And so, like, when he goes back, he doesn't feel like the same person because he's burdened with this memory of being a terrible person, right? Because the whole movie he doesn't really seem like a terrible person.
yeah,
But then once he realizes that he kind of is a shitbag, he's like, I don't I don't want to ruin your life anymore. You know, I I'm gonna leave, right? Like, and maybe leaving's not the best thing to do here still. I don't know. But like, I don't know. That's so I felt like maybe he really didn't understand before because it felt like such a sudden shift. Even that
right.
second time he went, like his hair was kind of like slicked back and he looked like uh
More put together.
yeah, right. Yeah. Um
Interesting, because I didn't interpret it that way at all. I thought I didn't have anything. I I just thought he knew everything the whole time. I didn't think there was any genuine forgetting. Maybe like I don't know. Especially at the end, I thought when he said, "Oh no, that wasn't me." I think he was just maybe
yeah.
embarrassed or didn't want her to know or whatever. I didn't think he was genuinely saying that. I thought he was not being truthful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would make sense. That's how you had a different experience with the main character than I did.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
yeah, I just really struggle. Like, it's tough because I love the imagery in the movie. Like, just the
Oh yeah.
imagery of a guy wandering through the desert in America and him, I don't know, he's such a cipher that people can put their, like, project their own things onto when they're watching the
Yeah.
movie. And I really really liked that and I wanted to really love the movie, but as I learned more about him I felt more distanced like from the character. um so yeah, and like when there's that scene when he's like trying to get his kid to walk home from school with him, and I'm like, well, yeah, obviously the kid doesn't. You're a stranger, like you're a no one. Obviously the kid doesn't. Like I don't have any sympathy for you. Well, it makes sense that the kid doesn't want anything to do with you. And then when he does walk home with him, it's like, I the way it seemed to me, it was supposed to be a very heartwarming scene of them sort of bonding and when they're walking on the other sides of the street and they're kind of goofing around and but I couldn't get past the fact that like it didn't feel like it didn't feel heartwarming to me. That's just not
Mm.
how I felt about it. So I just didn't fully connect with the movie on some of those like story and character things, even though some of the imagery is really, really fantastic. So
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think if you're not liking this character, right? If you already think that he's not really the an ideal guy or like a good guy, right? Then that ending scene doesn't maybe feel the same way it did for me, right? For me, it felt like almost like a horror scene where like I'm learning that like this is like a twist in like a big thriller or something where suddenly everything you knew about the movie was wrong, right? But if you already kind of
mm,
felt like this guy was a scumbag, it doesn't really help, right? Like that, then
yeah,
that's a totally different perspective. So I can totally see us having different views on just the plot, but I'm glad we agree that this movie looks like a banger. This movie is
yeah. Oh
gorgeous.
yeah. And that scene at the end, I really love that shot of his face like in the mirror reflecting on top of her face.
Yeah,
Really just a cool, creepy shot, almost felt David Lynch, like something in out of a David Lynch movie. But I
yeah.
love that shot and yeah, it's a really well shot movie and I totally understand why it's a classic. But yeah.
Yeah, and I really think the music helps so much with this movie. It feels so uh it just feels so on point every time that I hear the music start. I'm like I'm so in it. I feel like I'm putting my cowboy boots on. I'm like I'm sitting there ready to just be in Texas, you know, and big big accomplishment for Ry Cooder and Robbie Mueller for both doing such a fantastic job to make this movie feel so alive.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Another, I hate to be a negative Nancy about this movie.
Go for it.
The age gap bothered me. The age, the age of the actors at the time of this movie. Harry Dean Stanton was born in the year 1926. He was 58 years old. Natasha Kinski, born in 1961, 23 years old. And at a certain point in the movie, he says she's about 25 years old. And when they met, she was about 17 or 18, which really means 17. Uh, so and the kid is about to turn 8. So that would make sense in the timeline. Like if maybe they met it when she was 17, has the kid 18,
Yeah.
and now she's maybe 25, 26, whatever. So like I just could not get past the age gap in the movie. It just I don't know.
Yeah.
It was another reason that I hated the character. and and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I think again, I think that kind of for me kind of came together towards the end, right? As like he goes to visit her that first time and then is kind of realizing that that's who he was and then the second time and everything. So for
Right.
me, it like I also did not like that. Uh that's bad.
Yeah.
and and I don't think we're supposed to like that, I assume.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Those Europeans, I have no idea. But
But yeah, so I think again, I think that might be one of those for me, like I felt like it helped me realize that he was a bad guy at like the right time.
I
But yeah.
I see what you're saying, and I like it is interesting that we viewed it that
Yeah.
differently. I think maybe this makes me a little bit simple. If there was if there was an explanation of like, oh, he was in a car crash and he has brain
Mm,
damage, and that's why he does it. If they just gave me a little bit of that, then it's like, oh, he's trying to rediscover his life.
hmm.
Um, maybe then I would have felt similarly to you, but I never got it really honestly never crossed my mind that this is a guy who genuinely doesn't remember things.
Yeah.
It never even crossed my mind as a possibility. And maybe, I don't know. I just thought he was okay. Now he's coming back into this kid's life years later after he's just been wandering the desert. But yeah, and maybe that makes the movie would have made the movie a little more Hollywood, and that's kind of silly to be like, oh, he got in a car crash and now he can't remember. Like that's a really corny plot point. But if they did something like that, I feel like it would have been something for me to hang on to, and it, it, it maybe it would have worked better for me. But yeah,
Yeah, that is interesting that we really had such different interpretations of that that part of this character, like whether or not he actually remembers, right? Because
Yeah.
and I did have questions about that because like he remembered the plot of Land and there was like a couple things, but
And
yeah.
sorry, I don't mean to
No,
cut you
yeah,
off,
yeah.
but also at the beginning of the movie, he's not talking and it seems like he's mute and then he just starts talking. So he, from the beginning of the movie, he appears to be like deceptive to me, where he's
Mm,
not being fully honest with people. So maybe that was also a reason that I like didn't necessarily believe him when he said that he didn't remember things.
yeah. See, that's interesting. Yeah, like to me, I think him not talking helped me believe that like something was wrong, right? Like whether he was in like a fugue state or like a car crash and amnesia or like
For
something, right?
four
Um,
years?
well, like I don't know, like maybe he left his family and then like 10 days ago he went into a fugue state, right? But he's been living normal as a douchebag for 4 years, right? And then just happens to recently have gotten into a car crash or a fugue state or whatever, right? Something happened. But I can see like, yeah, there's no, I guess it doesn't really give us the definitive, like, like, does he remember, right? It's so interesting because to me it felt very cut and dry. Like he did pretty much, like to me, I was like, there's no way he remembers, right? Like, yeah, he remembers one or two things, but like, I'm sure that happens with like some like when someone goes into like a fugue state or gets into amnesia, but um and then
And
for
to
you it's
me,
like the total opposite.
yeah, complete opposite. Complete opposite. Yeah,
That's
interesting.
so interesting.
So that
um
makes sense why we had different experiences with the movie. But
yeah.
that's what's great about movies.
Oh yeah.
I never would have it would never would have crossed my mind that was the way someone experienced the movie if we didn't have this conversation. But if anyone's listening and they have their own interpretation of what's going on in the movie, I'd love to see in the comments if or wherever, go on our letterboxd, our YouTube, whatever. Shoot, I'd be very curious to hear other people's interpretations of the movie.
Yeah, I think this movie to me feels like a movie where there can be so many interpretations, which is funny that I said that, and then we both had very different interpretations.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that political interpretation might be a little biased in my kind of current conceptualization of American politics, but I do think like there's a lot of ways because he's such like a blank slate character in the beginning. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of interject other things onto him,
yeah.
and interpret it differently.
And that was part of the thing with me of like I really liked that at the beginning and I was curious and I was interested, but as I learned more, I just it lost me more and more.
Yeah.
But yeah,
To me, there's almost like this horror element of like you can put yourself on this character for the first like uh how long is this movie? It's gotta be like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can put yourself on this character for like 2 hours, right? And then the last 20 minutes, you're like, wait a second, what have I done?
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I feel
um,
like I had that for maybe the first like 20 minutes where
interesting.
like it is a very weird depiction of this area where it feels very dreamlike. It almost feels like I don't know, like a painting or like he's kind of wandering through a painting. Like there's not many people around. For whatever reason, there's a German doctor in the middle of nowhere in Texas. Like, and it's never explained or anything like that. Like it has a surreal quality to it that I really enjoyed. But once they even on the road trip when Travis is not talking and they have to drive back and they do almost classic. I feel like this is a classic thing in the 80s of we have to get somewhere but we want it to be a road trip. Therefore, a character has to be like afraid of flying or like freak out on the plane, or they have to have a reason that they can't fly. And they even do this in this movie. Um, but all that stuff of them driving back to Los Angeles, it still had that dreamy feel to me. But I think once the kid is in the picture, like I maybe had more empathy for the kid and for Walt and Anne than I did for Travis. I was like, oh, Travis, you just fucked all these people's lives up. And then, you know what I mean? So instead of being like, oh, what's up with this interesting character and what's going on, I just kind of, it felt too real for me to connect on that like surreal, dreamlike way that I was connecting with the movie in the beginning. So yeah, that's where I feel like it shifted for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can definitely see that being the shift because, like, yeah, you could just start to empathize with the kid more. Um, but yeah, I guess I don't know. I did care about the kid and I was interested in that, but I was also still like pretty intrigued on Travis's like what the hell happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
yeah,
he's a weird character. I don't know what's up with this guy. Like, is he supposed to be like autistic or something? Or like, I don't know. Like, he goes to the house and then overnight he like spends the night outside and he like lines up the boots on like this little half wall. And he just acts in such a strange way. Like in
almost
you know,
childish.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, so it was very I maybe I just needed a little bit more of an explanation. Maybe I don't know, but uh I felt like I was never able to figure him out, and then he just became a normal asshole at the end. I don't know.
yeah.
Whatever.
I feel
I've made
like
my point.
the Yeah, yeah. I feel like the feeling like he was acting childish, like with the refusing to go on the plane, and then like he's literally on the plane and he won't let them take off, right? Like they get kicked
Yeah.
off of the plane already
On
boarded and stuff, right? They're
on
on
the
the con.
runway, which
Yeah,
also would not happen today. You would it
yeah,
would be a whole. I mean, I think the FBI would be there or something.
yeah.
They
Um,
literally just walk onto the like runway and then they just like walk back.
yeah. And then the lining up the shoes and kind of having this like unawareness of like what like social things, right? When he's at his brother's house. Uh all of that to me, again, like I just because, and maybe this is just because I felt like I was so invested in the fact that maybe something was up with him where he didn't remember, right? Like I was thinking that maybe this was kind of like him relearning these things, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't know. Like to me, like the childishness aspect of it felt normal because I felt like he was like going from not talking to doing some talking, but kind of being a little childish to being ready for this road trip with his kid to
Hmm.
learning who he is, right? And
Almost like Poor Things. Like he has a baby brain and he has to he has to slowly mature over the movie.
maybe that's what happened to him over the 4 years.
Yeah. He got his brain
Willem
swapped for
Dafoe.
a baby brain. That's probably it. That honestly makes more sense than anything I could have come up with.
um, yeah, but and so speaking of like the uh what happened to him thing. I feel like this idea of like identity of like especially at the end with that shot that you mentioned where like he's looking into the mirror and it's like superimposed on her uh face also um like made me think a little bit at the end of like identity, and I didn't think too much about it because I was already kind of like uh I to be honest, that monologue at the end like hit me so it like wore me down. I was like, damn, I can't believe that I liked this guy. And
Mm.
like it was so a little hard to like take too much notes at the end, to be honest. I was like, but I was thinking a little bit about identity there at the end where like he's learned who he is, and there's that idea of like what have I done type of thing, and like um can like can we change who we are, right? Do we need to have some weird random thing happen to us over 4 years that makes us leave our family and forget everything to be able to change who we are, right? Or like I feel like maybe the ending of the movie was trying to hint on something there of like a theme of like identity and self growth or something. um
Mm.
but I don't know if you noticed any of that, or maybe not because of your like you already kind of weren't sold on this guy's changing identity anyways.
Yeah, I didn't have that same feeling because I
Yeah.
felt like he was the whole movie he was being deceptive is more how I interpreted his actions. Or yeah, I didn't have I had a much more negative understanding of the character from the beginning, and I kind of didn't buy it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
I think a lot of people probably agree with you about a lot of these things because this clearly is a movie that a lot of people really love, and I'm glad I finally watched it.
Yeah. Which I mean, unless there's anything else to say about it, that could be a good segue to doing the
Yeah,
scores.
yeah. Let's do the review aggregator. Did we have a name for
Yeah.
this and then I forgot?
The
The
maybe.
the the review. Give me the reviews.
Yeah, the review recap. How about that?
Oh, review recap. I like that. We like
Uh
alliteration in the show.
yeah, pretty much everything we try to do is alliterative. Um yeah, so this movie is very highly rated. It's somewhere in the top 250 on Letterboxd. Um it's got 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, 93% audience score, 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is an average of 8.925 out of 10, which I
Oh,
think is only beaten by in the
I
movies
mean
that
that.
we've seen by Metropolis, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean that makes sense. I wonder
Yeah.
like on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like how many people in the audience score, like how many people have rated Paris, Texas versus The Tree of Life. Because I mean, it does make sense. It's a very popular movie. It's sort of, I feel like a cult classic. A lot of people really love it. But I wouldn't imagine that like general audiences would love Paris, Texas. Maybe not as off-putting as some aspects of The Tree of Life, because The Tree of Life is very unconventional. But it's a little surprising the audience score is that high. But
I would agree. I think I would also expect the audience score to have dipped quite a bit. I mean, this is only a 2% difference means nothing. Like
yeah,
that's pure chance, right? So yeah, that's pretty surprising. I would think that this movie is kind of unconventional and strange at times. So
yeah.
and it's very
But
slow. The movie is slow too, which
it,
can turn a lot of people off, I think.
yeah, it also came out in the 80s versus Tree of Life came out in 2011. So in 2011, there were probably people who went to the theater, saw it, saw Tree of Life, hated it, and then gave it like a thumbs down on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who go back to watch Paris, Texas, there's probably a little bit of a self-selecting sample where people who are into these type of like poetic art house movies are gonna gravitate toward it. So that could also be a factor.
Yeah. I will say it's interesting that both these movies kind of have a lot to do with um, kind of American idealist family kind of not working out, right? Kind of thing,
Yeah.
or the
Yes.
unreality, the disillusionment of that, right?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that both of these movies have really bad fathers in them.
Yes, yeah,
Like really, really bad dads. I don't know
yeah,
if I have that much else to say about it, but it was just something I noticed.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about how bad they are already, but yeah, like don't aspire to be these dads for sure.
Yeah, I didn't think there would be a worse dad than Brad Pitt in The Tree of Life, but we may have found him. I don't know. I mean, it's close. It's pretty close.
There you go. But in terms of our scores, real quick, I gave this 5 out of 5 for me. This I felt like this was a pretty awesome masterpiece. I felt like there's a lot of themes and layers to it. But
I gave it 3.5 out of 5. I appreciated a lot of aspects of it, but I obviously, if you listen to my ramblings, I was frustrated by other aspects of the movie. So it was kind of a hard one to rate because I was
yeah,
like just based on I understand why someone would give it 5 stars based on the cinematography, the music, the use of color and just the vibe of it. Like if I could get past my things with the character and the story, like I could see just like putting this movie on and you enjoy the music and the beautiful cinematography. But yeah, I just couldn't get past some those aspects of the movie. But
yeah,
I'm so glad I watched it and definitely an interesting movie.
yeah. I'll say too, this is uh this movie, like the whole aesthetics of the movie felt a little nostalgic for me too, which I think helped a lot in my enjoyment because the I grew up in Texas and in this kind of part of Texas. I grew up in El Paso, which is very Western Texas.
Yeah.
So definitely a little nostalgic. And I think that definitely influenced my opinion at the very beginning. I was like, oh yeah, like
Nice.
we're so
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, because you did grow up in Texas for most of your whatever your until you were what, 9 or 10 or something?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was just curious how that affected you, if you felt any similarities to your experience in Texas with either the movies or anything.
Definitely more with Paris, Texas, in terms of just aesthetics, right? I mean,
Hmm.
um, uh,
You never.
I didn't relate so much to either one of these like family dynamics,
Well, that's
thankfully.
good. That's yeah. Thankfully, yes.
um, but definitely like aesthetically, with this being on that western area, like El Paso has a lot of desert, and White Sands is right there over the border, and so um, a lot of my memories, actually thinking of it kind of like a series of memories,
Mm,
like in the Tree of Life. A lot of my memories of that era would be deserts and high winds and literal tumbleweed and stuff. So,
mm. Interesting.
and the Tree of Life, where there's like lots of like trees and like kind of suburbia. I don't think I really related that much to that part, but
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I've never been to the like American Southwest. I'd like to go. I feel like it is of I don't know, there's a lot of movies about it in that area. And maybe it's romanticized, but yeah, it's interesting. Texas is such a giant state. There's so many different uh, you know, climates and different types of cities and towns and different cultures, and it's a
yeah,
very interesting state.
yeah, and there's a coast. Uh,
Yeah,
that's like I think a lot of people forget that like there's a whole coastal side to Texas too that people I mean there's so much. Texas is a very diverse
yeah,
state.
yeah, definitely. I've never been.
Got to go sometime.
Maybe. Yeah, I'd like to. That'd be cool. Um, all right. Well, anyway,
Cool. So
I guess that's that. Is it time to get on to our uh we had a name for this. Damn, I need to
category
write this
cup,
shit down. What? Oh, category cup.
category cup.
The cup of categories. I have it
we
right here.
we really do like the alliteration.
I mean, how else are we supposed to think of names for things? What are we supposed to call it? Topic cup? That sucks. A cup of topics? No, thank you. All right. Well, I guess I'll take a
Here we
new
go.
topic for episode 13. Or wait,
Insert drum roll.
this episode 13? This is episode
This is
13.
episode 13. This will be episode 14.
Yes.
So if
And
you've
here
made it
we
this
go.
far and you're following along, let's see what we're about to be watching for the next 2 weeks.
Ooh, we got Studio Ghibli.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. We're
I
going
was
back.
just looking forward to watching more Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli movies. So this is awesome.
Hell yeah. That is awesome. So, I mean, yeah, that's our topic, Studio Ghibli. Obviously, Miyazaki is kind of the biggest figure from Studio Ghibli. I don't know if we want to do two Miyazakis or try to do one Miyazaki, one non Maybe I'll look at some of the Studio Ghibli library and
Yeah.
we can see what's up with it. But this is also a little bit of an easier one to pick because it's a concrete selection of movies. It's not very
Yeah.
broad
Yeah,
of a
if you remember
topic.
from we thought that last time though, and actually picking these two movies, y'all would not believe how much time we cut out of that episode.
It was quite difficult to pick.
But
So the thing is, I've seen a bunch of the Miyazaki movies, and one of the only non-Miyazaki movies I've seen is Grave of the Fireflies, which frankly I don't necessarily want to rewatch. It's um but yeah, I mean, got some good choices here. We could There's also Only Yesterday by Isao Takahata, which we could also watch. Or Pompoko. That one has the raccoon balls in it.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that one could be
Interesting.
fun.
I am kind of tempted to just go The Boy and the Heron because it's so recent.
Mm.
Um
Part of me wants to go with like Castle in the Sky, which is one of the only Miyazakis I have not seen.
ah
Um, or maybe like rewatch Porco Rosso. But also I could just pick my favorite, which is My Neighbor Totoro. Yeah, according to Letterboxd popularity, the most popular is Spirited Away, then Howl's Moving Castle, then Totoro, then Boy and the Heron.
Spirited Away is number 30 on Letterboxd's 250 list.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I will say, um, the Studio Ghibli like mascot is Totoro. Like he's on
Oh,
their logo. So it could make sense to do Totoro. Because we could do Totoro and Spirited Away. That'll be the most popular movie and their logo.
that's true. That's true.
That
And
would
your
be,
favorite.
and also I'm also trying to find a way to get Totoro in there.
I mean, I'd
Owl's
totally be down for that.
Owl's Castle can move on out of here.
I'm just gonna pick Spirited Away. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
with the most popular. It's number 30 on the list.
Yeah. So now I would be between Totoro
Porco
or
Rosso.
Porco Rosso. Porco Rosso might be kind of nice.
We're
But
back, and we've decided on our Studio Ghibli movies. Um, I'm gonna go with Spirited Away for my pick. The
and
most
I'm going
popular, very highly rated. Chain.
and I'm going with My Neighbor Totoro. We took a little while to figure it out. We ended up going with kind of the two most obvious movies. But Totoro is the like mascot and logo of Studio Ghibli, and Spirited Away is probably the biggest and most popular one. So yeah, it kind of makes sense to just do those two. We've also, for anyone listening, we've already talked about Ponyo on a previous episode of the show. So maybe like episode 9 or some 10, I don't know. It's about movies about magic. That's the
Yeah.
episode. But but yeah, so we've also done quite a few anime movies. We've done Perfect Blue, we've done obviously Ponyo, and then have we done I feel like we did something else, but I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head. I probably
Hmm.
should have remembered that before I started down this
Ah, that's all right.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we've done at least those two, and this will add two more. I mean that's pretty awesome. We've
Yeah.
got. I feel like we've got a pretty nice range of different. Oh, we've done Tokyo Godfathers also.
Yes.
Um, I feel like we've got a pretty good range of movies that we've been able to cover
Yeah.
in the podcast, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job of like getting different countries, different genres, stuff like that. I will say there's only well, there's we've done 3 movies directed by women, with or yeah, and one non-binary person, I guess, right? Or no, 4 movies directed by women. Hey, you know what? We got more than I thought. Which still that's probably like only about 10%. But eh. Part of that also is that there are so many more movies directed by men than women that it's gonna naturally be uneven. But I do think we've done a decent job of naturally diversifying without uh trying to force like, oh, we got to do a movie from from Europe or from fucking France or something. I don't know, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you guys want us to cover, we've got a lot of half episodes. Our half episodes we do on all sorts of stuff. We do them on recent movies or just movies we recently watched or enjoy. To we did the Oscars, right?
Yep. And we've also thought maybe we could do like top fives for things, or you know what I mean, like each of our top 5 of a certain topic for a half episode rather than covering a particular movie. So but yeah, if anyone has any recommendations for that, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, so let us know, right? You guys can obviously, hopefully, you know how to find us at this point. You can find us on Letterboxd. Type in "Mind Your Movies," all one word, and we come up. On there, we've got links to everything: our Instagram, our YouTube, our Blue Sky, anything,
And
right? However
the
you want to find us.
podcast listening places. Yeah.
That's right. And if you're listening on YouTube, do the YouTube things. That always helps us. And if you're on one of your podcast streaming sites, drop us a review, drop us a comment. Let us know how you're feeling, how you like these movies.
Yeah.
How did you interpret the Paris, Texas?
Yeah.
What did you think about the Tree of Life? Tell us.
Both these movies are very ripe for personal interpretation, I think. So I would definitely be curious to hear people's what people thought of the movies. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yep.
this was a good episode. A lot to talk about, a lot of couple of great, very interesting movies.
Absolutely. Catch us next week for whatever our half episode ends up being.
Yeah. Well, hey, subscribe, and it doesn't matter because it'll just pop up for you. And also, if you follow us on like Instagram, that we always post when the new episode is out. So you'll know what we're covering when the episode comes out.
That's right. All right, y'all. See you next time.